I never thought I'd wake up in a hospital bed with a judge standing over me holding my sister's purse in one hand and my missing epilepsy medication in the other. 3 months earlier, when Madison first started taking my pills, our parents called me selfish for not sharing. They said I was using my condition to get attention. But as I lay there with IV lines in my arms, watching the judge's face turn from concern to fury, I knew everything was about to change. The morning everything started, I was deep in concentration, designing a website for a local bakery called Sweet Sunrise. My fingers moved across the keyboard with practiced ease, adjusting the color palette to match their signature lavender macarons when the doorbell rang. The sound cut through my focus like a knife through butter. The postal worker handed me a certified letter that required my signature. My hands trembled slightly as I signed, recognizing the law firm's name printed in elegant script across the envelope. Ashford & Associates had managed my grandmother Dorothy's affairs for decades. I settled back at my desk and carefully opened the envelope. The letter inside was formal, typed on cream-colored paper that felt expensive between my fingers. Grandma Dorothy had passed away 6 weeks ago, and now her estate was ready for distribution. The hearing was scheduled for next month at the county courthouse. What caught my breath wasn't just the notification of the hearing, it was the second paragraph that made me read twice to make sure I understood correctly. Grandma had left behind far more than anyone in our family had expected, nearly $2 million in investments, her Victorian house in Savannah with its wraparound porch and century-old magnolia trees, and most intriguingly specific instructions that the estate be divided based on who had shown true character. I leaned back in my chair, memories of Grandma flooding my mind. She'd always been mysterious about her finances, living modestly despite hints of hidden wealth. Her idea of showing true character could mean anything, knowing her unconventional wisdom. My epilepsy medication alarm chimed from my phone, bringing me back to the present. I walked to the kitchen and opened my weekly pill organizer, each compartment carefully labeled with days and times. The white tablets inside represented 5 years of successfully managed epilepsy. Working from home as a freelance graphic designer had given me the flexibility to accommodate my condition without the stress of commuting or rigid office hours. I'd just swallowed my noon dose when my phone buzzed. Madison's name flashed on the screen. My younger sister rarely called unless she needed something. "Did you get the letter?" Her voice was breathless, excited in a way that immediately put me on edge. "Just opened it," I replied, returning to my computer. "I'm coming over. We need to talk strategy." Before I could protest, she'd hung up. Madison's definition of strategy usually involved her getting the maximum benefit from any situation. Her third business venture, a boutique fitness studio, had collapsed just 2 months ago, leaving her in significant debt. I suspected the timing of Grandma's estate hearing seemed like divine intervention to her. Within an hour, my doorbell rang again. Madison stood on my doorstep, her designer sunglasses pushed up into her perfectly highlighted hair. Despite her recent business failure, she still dressed like success was just around the corner. $2 million, Jody," she said, breezing past me into my apartment. "Can you believe Grandma was sitting on that kind of money?" She headed straight for my kitchen, helping herself to the organic juice I'd bought earlier. Her eyes swept across my counter, taking inventory like she always did. They landed on my pill organizer, still sitting next to the sink. "What are all these?" She picked up the container, examining it with unusual interest. "My anti-seizure medication. You know I have epilepsy, Madison." She opened Thursday's compartment, rolling one of the white pills between her fingers. "These look expensive. What do they do exactly?" Something in her tone made me uncomfortable. I reached for the organizer, but she moved it away, still studying the pills. "They prevent seizures. Without them, I could have a grand mal seizure that could be fatal." I kept my voice steady, but her intense interest was concerning. "Do they have any other effects? Like, do they make you feel calm or focused?" "That's not what they're for. They're specifically formulated for epilepsy." I finally managed to take the organizer from her hands and return it to its spot. Madison's eyes followed the container. "Must be nice having good insurance. These pharmaceutical companies make a fortune off people's problems." We spent the next hour discussing Grandma's estate, but Madison seemed distracted. She kept glancing at my kitchen counter, and twice I caught her staring at my pill organizer. When she finally left, claiming she had a yoga class to teach, I felt an unexplainable unease. That evening, as I prepared for bed, I reached for my pill organizer to take my night dose. Thursday and Friday's evening compartments were empty. My blood ran cold. I specifically remembered filling the entire week on Sunday, my routine for the past 5 years. I searched the counter, the floor, even the garbage disposal, thinking maybe I'd knocked them out somehow. Nothing. Those pills didn't just disappear. As I stood in my kitchen, the realization hit me like ice water. Madison's unusual interest, her questions about the effects, the way she'd handled my medication. My own sister had stolen my anti-seizure medication. The betrayal stung, but the fear hit harder. Missing doses could trigger breakthrough seizures. I'd have to call Dr. Brennan in the morning for an emergency refill and hope my insurance wouldn't flag it. As I lay in bed that night, I couldn't stop thinking about Madison's calculating expression as she'd studied my pills. This was only the beginning. The next morning arrived with an insistent pounding on my door. I'd barely slept, worry about my missing medication mixing with disbelief over Madison's theft. Through the peephole, I saw not just Madison, but our parents standing on my doorstep. My stomach dropped. A family ambush before 9 in the morning never meant anything good. I opened the door to find Madison looking remarkably refreshed for someone who'd stolen medication the day before. Mom stood beside her, arms crossed in that familiar stance that meant she'd already chosen a side. Dad lingered behind them, checking his phone but clearly present for whatever intervention they'd planned. "We need to talk," Mom announced, pushing past me into my living room. The others followed, making themselves comfortable on my furniture like they owned the place. Madison sat on my couch, pulling out a small bottle of water from her purse. "I want to be honest with you, Jody. I took those pills yesterday." The casual admission stunned me. I'd expected denials, gaslighting, anything but straightforward confession. "I've been having terrible anxiety." She continued, her voice taking on that victim tone she'd perfected over the years. The stress from closing my studio, the debt, and now Grandma's death. I couldn't sleep, couldn't think straight. I remembered reading that some seizure medications help with anxiety. "So you stole from me." My voice came out sharper than intended. Dad finally looked up from his phone. "Stealing is a strong word. She's your sister." "She took my prescription medication without permission. What would you call it?" Mom's face hardened. "I'd call it a cry for help from a family member in need. Madison came to us last night, told us everything. She said the pills helped her feel calm for the first time in months." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Those aren't anxiety medications. They're specifically formulated to prevent seizures. Taking them without a prescription is dangerous, and I need every single dose to prevent potentially fatal seizures. "Fatal," Dad scoffed. "You've been fine for years. Missing a dose or two won't kill you." My hands shook with frustration. That's exactly what could happen. Dr. Brennan has explained this repeatedly. Breakthrough seizures can occur if I miss doses, and stress increases the risk. Madison pulled something from her purse and my heart sank. My pill organizer sat in her manicured hands. "I know I shouldn't have taken them without asking, but Jody, you have so many. Can't you share just until I can see a doctor about getting my own prescription? Those aren't yours to take or distribute. Return them now." I reached for the container, but she pulled back. "This is exactly what I mean," she said, addressing our parents more than me. "Look how aggressive she's getting over a few pills." Mom nodded sympathetically. "Jody, we raised you to share. Family supports each other. Your sister is suffering and you have the means to help." By giving her my anti-seizure medication, I couldn't keep the incredulity out of my voice. "Stop being so dramatic," Dad interjected. "You make it sound like Madison's asking for a kidney. They're just pills." I watched in horror as Madison opened my weekly organizer and dumped the contents into her purse. The carefully organized doses scattered among her lip gloss and receipts. A week's worth of medication gone in seconds. Madison. I lunged forward, but Mom physically blocked my path. "Let her go," Mom commanded. "She needs this more than you do right now. You can get more from your doctor." "It doesn't work that way. Insurance tracks prescriptions. They'll flag this as suspicious. I could lose my coverage." Panic rose in my chest as I watched Madison zip her purse closed my medication, now hostage to her whims. "Maybe that would teach you some humility," Mom said coldly. "You've hidden behind this condition for years, using it as an excuse to work from home to avoid family gatherings to make yourself special." The accusation hit like a physical blow. I'd structured my entire life around managing my epilepsy, creating a successful career despite my limitations, and they saw it as attention-seeking. "I have a neurological condition," I said, slowly trying to control my voice. "It's documented, diagnosed, and requires daily medication. This isn't about being special. It's about staying alive and functional." Madison stood clutching her purse. "I promise I'll only take what I need. Maybe this will help you realize you're stronger than you think. You don't need to rely on pills so much. You have no medical training to make that assessment." I pulled out my phone. "I'm calling Dr. Brennan. She needs to know about this." "Go ahead," Dad said, heading for the door. "Tell your doctor your family needed help and you refused. See how that looks." They filed out of my apartment, Madison pausing at the threshold. "I really am grateful, Jody. You're saving my life right now, even if you don't see it that way." The door closed, leaving me alone with the devastating realization that my family had just sanctioned medical theft. My hands trembled as I scrolled to Dr. Brennan's number, knowing I'd have to explain the unexplainable, that the people who were supposed to protect me had just put my life at risk for the sake of Madison's self-diagnosed anxiety. I sank onto my couch, the spot still warm from where Madison had sat while planning her theft. The monthly pill organizer on my coffee table sat empty, a monument to family betrayal. As I listened to the phone ring, waiting for Dr. Brennan's office to answer, I wondered how many doses Madison would take before realizing they wouldn't solve her problems. More importantly, I wondered how many doses I could miss before my brain's carefully maintained chemical balance would tip toward disaster. The stress of this confrontation already had my heart racing, a known trigger for breakthrough seizures. The receptionist's voice came through the phone, and I began the humiliating process of explaining why I needed an emergency refill. Outside my window, I watched my family's car disappear down the street, carrying away more than just my medication. They'd taken my trust, my safety net, and any illusion I'd held about their regard for my well-being. This wasn't just theft. It was abandonment, disguised as tough love. Dr. Sarah Brennan's office occupied the third floor of a medical complex downtown. I'd been seeing her for 5 years, ever since my epilepsy diagnosis turned my world upside down. The familiar waiting room with its soothing blue walls usually calmed me, but that day I sat rigid in the chair, my emergency appointment squeezed between her regular patients. "Jody," the nurse called my name after what felt like hours but was probably 20 minutes. Dr. Brennan took one look at my face and closed her laptop. At 55, she had the kind of presence that made you feel simultaneously safe and compelled to tell the truth. Her silver-streaked hair was pulled back in its usual bun, and her brown eyes held deep concern. "Tell me what happened," she said simply, settling back in her chair. The story poured out in a rush. Madison's theft, my parents enabling the entire week's worth of medication, now sitting in my sister's purse. Dr. Brennan's expression grew increasingly grave as I spoke. "Let me make sure I understand," she said when I finished. "Your sister took your anti-seizure medication, your parents supported this action, and they physically prevented you from retrieving it." I nodded, feeling the absurdity of the situation even as I confirmed it. Dr. Brennan turned to her computer, fingers flying over the keyboard. "I can prescribe an emergency refill, but Jody, we have a serious problem. Your insurance company will flag this as suspicious. Multiple refills in a short period often indicate drug abuse or diversion." "But I'm the victim here," I protested. "I know that, and I'll document everything in your file. But insurance companies don't care about family dynamics. They see patterns." She printed out a prescription and handed it to me. This is for a 2-week supply. I'm also writing a letter explaining the medical necessity of maintaining your therapeutic levels." She pulled out a second sheet of letterhead and began writing by hand. Her usual calm demeanor cracked as she wrote, her pen pressing hard enough to indent the paper. "Missing even 2 doses could trigger breakthrough seizures," she said without looking up. "Your sister has no idea what she's playing with. These medications don't work like anxiety pills. They maintain a specific level in your bloodstream that keeps your neural activity stable." I tried to explain that to them. Dr. Brennan set down her pen and looked at me directly. "The stress of family conflict significantly increases your seizure risk. Your brain doesn't distinguish between physical and emotional threats. Both trigger the same neurological response." She handed me the letter, her medical opinion laid out in stark clinical terms. "I'm going to be very direct with you. You need to file a police report." My stomach clenched. Against my sister? Against someone who stole controlled medication. The fact that she's your sister doesn't change the medical reality. If she's taking these pills herself, she could have adverse reactions. If she's selling them, which is more likely given their street value, she's committing a felony. Street value. I'd never thought of my medication in those terms. Anti-seizure medications are increasingly popular as study aids and mood stabilizers on the black market. A month's supply can sell for hundreds of dollars. Dr. Brennan's expression was grim. "Your sister asked about the calming effects, right?" That wasn't casual curiosity. The implications made me feel sick. Madison hadn't just stolen from me. She might be planning to profit from my medical condition. "What do I do now?" I asked, clutching the prescription and letter. "First, get this filled immediately. Take the letter with you in case the pharmacist questions it. Second, secure your medication. Get a safe lockbox something." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "Third, consider your living situation. If your family has access to your home and doesn't respect your medical needs, you're not safe." "They're my family," I said weakly. "Family doesn't steal life-sustaining medication." Her voice was gentle but firm. "I've been treating you for 5 years, Jody. Your epilepsy is well controlled because you're diligent about your medication. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise." She turned back to her computer. "I'm noting in your file that your medication was stolen by a family member and that you're at increased risk for breakthrough seizures due to medication disruption and emotional stress. This creates a legal record if you need it later. If I need it for what? If you have a seizure because of missed doses, if your insurance drops you, if your sister gets arrested for selling your pills." She printed out pages from my medical record. "Take these. They show your consistent prescription history and my clinical notes about today's visit." As I stood to leave, Dr. Brennan added one more thing. "Jody, I've seen too many patients suffer because they didn't want to make waves with family. Your condition is real, your medication is essential, and anyone who tells you otherwise is putting your life at risk." The pharmacy was my next stop. Brian, the pharmacist who'd filled my prescriptions for years, frowned when he saw the emergency refill. "I just filled your monthly prescription last week," he said, pulling up my records. I handed him Dr. Brennan's letter. As he read, his expression shifted from suspicion to concern. "Medication theft is more common than people think," he said quietly. "Usually it's strangers, but family members." He shook his head. "Give me 15 minutes. While waiting, I found a medical supply store on my phone that sold medication safes. The thought of needing to lock up my pills in my own home felt surreal, but Dr. Brennan was right. My trust had been weaponized against me. Brian called me back to the counter with my medication and a printout. "I've documented this fill as an emergency replacement due to theft. Keep this with your records. Also," he lowered his voice, "if anyone comes in claiming to be picking up medication for you, we'll require photo ID and written authorization." "You think she'd try that?" "I've seen family members do worse. Be careful, Jody." I left the pharmacy with my replacement medication clutched tightly in my bag, already planning where to install the safe Dr. Brennan recommended. The medical evidence was clear my family had put me in danger. The only question now was whether I had the courage to protect myself from the people who were supposed to love me most. 2 weeks had passed since Madison's theft, and I'd managed to maintain my medication schedule thanks to Dr. Brennan's emergency prescription. The small safe bolted inside my bedroom closet held my main supply, while a locked container in my purse carried 3 days' worth. It felt like preparing for war in my own life. Mom's invitation to Sunday dinner came via text, casual as if nothing had happened. "Family dinner at 6. Don't be late." No apology, no acknowledgement of the chaos they'd caused. Part of me wanted to refuse, but Grandma's estate hearing loomed just 2 weeks away. I needed to know what Madison was planning. I arrived at my childhood home to find several cars in the driveway. Through the window, I could see Madison holding court in the living room, gesturing animatedly to our aunts and uncles. My stomach tightened. A larger audience meant a bigger performance. The familiar smell of Mom's pot roast hit me as I entered, but the comfort food couldn't mask the tension. Madison spotted me, immediately waving me over with enthusiasm that felt rehearsed. "Jody, come see what I bought." She gestured to a designer handbag that probably cost more than my monthly rent. "Isn't it gorgeous?" Our Aunt Patricia admired the bag while I tried to process this display. Madison had claimed crushing debt and anxiety just 2 weeks ago, yet here she was with luxury goods. "Business must be improving," I said carefully. Madison laughed, a bright sound that didn't reach her eyes. "Oh, I've found some new income streams. Sometimes crisis creates opportunity, you know." Uncle Robert, ever the businessman, perked up. "What kind of opportunities?" "Let's just say I've discovered some products that really help people focus. Students especially love them during finals season." Madison's smile was sharp as she glanced at me. "It's all about meeting market demand." My blood turned to ice. She wasn't even trying to hide it. "Madison," I said quietly, "we need to talk." "After dinner," she said breezily, turning back to our relatives. "I was just telling everyone about my new venture. Supplements and study aids are such a growing market." I watched her work the room, charming our family with talk of entrepreneurship and recovery from failure. No one seemed to notice the predatory gleam in her eyes or question where she'd gotten the capital for new ventures after her studio's bankruptcy. During dinner, I picked at my food while Madison regaled the table with stories of satisfied customers and quick profits. Each anecdote felt like another twist of the knife. She was building a business on my stolen medication, and our family was applauding her resourcefulness. "Some of these study aids are amazing," she said, cutting into her roast. "They help with focus, reduce anxiety, and some people say they even help with creative thinking." "Sounds too good to be true," Aunt Patricia commented. "Oh, they're pharmaceutical grade," Madison assured her. "Not some sketchy internet pills. These come from legitimate prescriptions." I set down my fork. "Whose prescriptions?" The table went quiet. Madison's smile never wavered. "People who have excess they don't need. It's like a sharing economy." "That's illegal," I stated flatly. Dad's fork clattered against his plate. "Jody, don't start." "Selling prescription medication is a felony, so is obtaining it through theft." Mom's face flushed. "No one stole anything. Family sharing isn't theft." "Then why is Madison selling my seizure medication to college students?" The words hung in the air like a grenade with the pin pulled. Several relatives looked between Madison and me, confusion evident on their faces. Madison's mask finally slipped. "You don't know what you're talking about." "You just described my anti-seizure medication perfectly. The effects you're advertising. Those are the side effects of my specific prescription when taken by people without epilepsy." I pulled out my phone, showing a picture of my pills I'd taken for insurance purposes. "These look familiar." "You're being paranoid," Madison snapped. "Am I? Then empty your purse. Prove you're not carrying my medication." Madison clutched her new designer bag closer. "This is ridiculous. I'm trying to rebuild my life, and you're attacking me over your conspiracy theories." I felt the familiar warning tingle in my hands, the subtle pre-seizure aura I'd learned to recognize. The stress was affecting me exactly as Dr. Brennan had warned. I reached for my emergency medication kept in the locked container in my purse. Madison's eyes tracked my movement. Oh, here we go. She's going to fake a seizure for sympathy. My hands shook as I struggled with the lock combination. The aura was intensifying, my peripheral vision starting to shimmer. Can't even open a simple container, Madison taunted. How disabled are you, really? Someone gasped, but I couldn't tell who. My fingers finally got the combination right, and I quickly took my emergency dose, hoping it would stave off the seizure. Such drama. Madison continued. This is exactly what I mean. She uses this supposed condition to manipulate everyone. Madison, Aunt Patricia's voice was sharp. That's enough. But Madison was on a roll. She's probably not even epileptic. Have any of you actually seen her have a seizure? It's all for attention to make herself special. My vision was stabilizing thanks to the medication, but rage replaced the aura. You want to see my medical records? The EEG results, the neurological scans. Papers can be faked, Madison said dismissively. Doctors will diagnose anything if you pay them enough. I stood my legs unsteady, but my resolve firm. You're selling my medication to students. You admitted it in front of everyone. I have witnesses. Prove it, Madison challenged. That's when she made her crucial mistake. In her agitation, she'd set her purse on the table, and the contents had shifted. Through the open top, several pill bottles were visible. Even from across the table, I could see prescription labels. Uncle Robert saw them too. Madison, those prescriptions. None of them have your name. The room exploded. Madison tried to close her purse, but Aunt Patricia was already reaching for it. Pills scattered across the tablecloth bottles, rolling onto the floor. My medication mixed with others, all bearing different names. I can explain. Madison started, but even our parents looked shaken. I bent to pick up one bottle, my name clearly visible on the label. This is dated last week, my emergency refill. You must have planted that, Madison's voice was shrill. In the purse you've been carrying all evening. Uncle Robert's tone was incredulous. Mom found her voice. Madison, what is all this? It's nothing. Jody's setting me up because she's jealous about the inheritance. But the evidence was overwhelming. Bottles with names our family didn't recognize, pills of different types and colors, far more than any one person would legitimately possess. I looked at my parents. She's been stealing from other epilepsy patients too. This is a drug ring. Dad's face had gone gray. Madison, tell me this isn't true. Madison's response was to grab her purse, shoving pills back inside. I don't have to explain myself to any of you, especially not to her. She pointed at me with venom. This is all her fault. If she'd just shared in the first place, none of this would have happened. She stormed out, leaving chaos in her wake. Mom started to follow, but Dad caught her arm. Let her go, he said quietly. We need to think. I sank back into my chair, the adrenaline crash making me dizzy. Around me, my family tried to process what they'd witnessed. The golden child had just revealed herself as a common drug dealer, and my attention-seeking condition was the source of her inventory. Aunt Patricia touched my shoulder gently. Jody, I'm so sorry. We should have listened. But apologies couldn't undo the weeks of stress, the missed doses, or the knowledge that my sister saw my life-threatening condition as a business opportunity. As sirens wailed in the distance, someone having apparently called the police, I realized this family dinner had destroyed more than just our Sunday tradition. It had shattered the illusion that blood meant anything when money was involved. 3 days after the disastrous family dinner, I sat in my home office staring at a letter that made my hands shake. The insurance company had launched a formal investigation into what they termed unusual prescription patterns. The clinical language couldn't mask the accusation they suspected fraud. The phone rang and I reluctantly answered. The insurance representative's voice was professionally cold. Ms. Matthews, this is Sandra Williams from Integrated Health Insurance. I'm calling regarding your recent prescription claims. I received your letter. I managed my throat dry. Good. Can you explain why you've had multiple refills for the same medication within a 30-day period? I'd rehearsed this explanation, but it still felt surreal. My medication was stolen by a family member. My neurologist, Dr. Brennan, provided documentation and authorized emergency refills. Stolen. Sandra repeated, skepticism dripping from the word. By a family member. My sister, there's a police report. I see. The clicking of keyboard keys filled the pause. Ms. Matthews, are you aware that sharing prescription medication, even with family, constitutes fraud? I didn't share anything. It was stolen. There's a significant difference. From our perspective, family members having access to your medication suggests either negligence in securing controlled substances or voluntary distribution. Her tone sharpened. Have you sold or given away any of your prescribed medication? Absolutely not. I need every dose to prevent seizures. Yet somehow your sister obtained multiple bottles. Can you explain that? The interrogation continued for 20 minutes. Sandra questioned every aspect of my story, from why I hadn't immediately reported the first theft to how Madison knew where I kept my medication. Each question felt designed to trap me into admitting complicity. We'll need additional documentation, Sandra finally said. Medical records, police reports, sworn statements. You have 30 days to provide everything, or we'll terminate your coverage. Terminate. The word hit like a physical blow. For being a crime victim. For failing to properly secure controlled substances, resulting in their diversion. She paused. I should also inform you that any future prescriptions will require prior authorization and may be limited to 7-day supplies. After she hung up, I stared at my phone in disbelief. Without insurance, my medication would cost over $3,000 monthly. My freelance income was good, but not that good. I immediately called Jennifer Walsh, an attorney I'd found who specialized in healthcare advocacy. She'd agreed to a consultation after hearing the basics of my situation. Jennifer's office was downtown, sandwiched between a coffee shop and a tax preparation service. Despite the modest location, her credentials were impressive, 15 years fighting insurance companies and winning. They're trying to drop you to avoid liability, Jennifer said after reviewing my documents. She was in her 40s with sharp eyes that missed nothing. If you have a seizure due to medication theft they failed to prevent after being notified they could face a lawsuit, it's easier to claim you're the problem. But I have documentation proving the theft. Which is why we're going to bury them in paperwork. She pulled out a legal pad and began writing. First, cease and desist letters to your sister and parents. We need to establish a legal record that they've been formally warned against interfering with your medical treatment. Letters to my parents. The family divide was becoming a legal chasm. They physically prevented you from retrieving stolen medication. That's assault in the context of medical endangerment. Jennifer's pen moved rapidly across the page. Second, we demand the insurance company preserve all records related to your case. Third, we file a complaint with the State Insurance Commission. Will any of this work? Insurance companies count on people being too sick or scared to fight back. We're going to make it more expensive for them to drop you than to continue coverage. She looked up from her notes. But Jody, this is going to get ugly. Your family won't appreciate legal action. That evening, I attended a support group meeting for epilepsy patients. I'd resisted joining for years, but Dr. Brennan had insisted I needed community support. The meeting was in a church basement, a circle of chairs and cautious faces. I'm Jody, I said when my turn came. I've had epilepsy for 5 years, and my sister has been stealing my medication to sell. The group's reaction was immediate and visceral. Several people nodded knowingly, and a woman named Carol spoke up. My son did the same thing, started with just a few pills, then entire bottles. I had to get a restraining order. Stories poured out. Family members who saw seizure medication as recreational drugs, insurance companies that punished victims, the impossible choice between family loyalty and medical safety. I wasn't alone in this nightmare. After the meeting, a man named David approached me. He was a paralegal who'd lost his job after missing doses led to a public seizure. Document everything, he advised. Every text, every conversation, every missing pill. The insurance company will try to paint you as an unreliable narrator. Hard evidence is your only defense. The cease and desist letters were delivered 2 days later. The first call came from Mom within an hour. "How dare you threaten us with legal action?" Her voice was shrill. "We're your parents." "Parents who enabled medication theft," I replied, following Jennifer's script. "This is a formal notice to stop interfering with my medical treatment." Interfering? We were trying to help Madison. By stealing my anti-seizure medication. "Mom, she's selling it to college students. This is a crime." "She's your sister. Family doesn't involve lawyers." Family doesn't steal life-saving medication either, yet here we are. Dad called next, his approach different but equally manipulative. "Jody, sweetheart, this has gotten out of hand. Drop the lawyer and we'll make sure Madison returns your pills." It's too late for that. The insurance company is investigating. The police are involved. Madison crossed a line that can't be uncrossed. "You're destroying our family over pills." His voice turned cold. "Is that what Grandma would want for us to be fighting like this, right before her estate distribution?" There it was, the real concern. Not my health, not Madison's criminal behavior, but the money. Grandma wanted character to determine inheritance, I reminded him. I think stealing medication and endangering lives shows plenty of character, just not the kind she'd reward. "You always were too sensitive," he said before hanging up. Jennifer called that evening with an update. "Your insurance company just received our response. 50 pages of documentation, including sworn affidavits from other victims of prescription theft in your family's area." Other victims. Remember when you mentioned Madison had other pills with different names? We tracked down 3 of them. All epilepsy patients, all reporting thefts in the past 2 months. Your sister has been running a sophisticated operation. The weight of Madison's betrayal pressed down on me. This wasn't opportunistic theft from a desperate sister. This was calculated predation on vulnerable people. What happens now? We wait. Either the insurance backs down or we file a formal complaint that triggers a state investigation. Either way, you maintain your coverage while this plays out. Jennifer paused. "But Jody, you need to prepare for escalation. People like Madison don't stop when confronted. They get more creative." That night, I took my medication from the safe, counting each pill twice. 4 weeks until Grandma's estate hearing. 4 weeks of insurance battles, family warfare, and the constant fear that Madison would find another way to access my medication. I thought about the support group, about Carol's restraining order against her son, about David losing his job after a seizure. We were all casualties of a system that treated our medication like optional supplements rather than life-sustaining necessities. The irony wasn't lost on me. Madison claimed she needed my pills for anxiety, but she'd created more anxiety in my life than I'd experienced since my diagnosis. The real sickness wasn't in my neural pathways, but in the family dynamics that prioritized one person's wants over another's needs. As I locked the safe and set my medication alarm for the morning, I wondered if Grandma had somehow foreseen this. Her stipulation about character suddenly seemed less like elderly eccentricity and more like protective wisdom. Tomorrow would bring more battles with insurance, more family drama, more uncertainty. But tonight, I had my medication good legal counsel and the growing realization that sometimes the most dangerous predators share your DNA. The call from Thomas Ashford came on a Tuesday morning while I was reviewing insurance documents with growing despair. His voice was cultured, careful, the sound of old Southern money and older secrets. "Ms. Matthews, I'm calling regarding your grandmother Dorothy's estate. Would you be available for a private meeting this afternoon?" "Private?" I echoed, saving my work. "Is that typical?" "Your grandmother left specific instructions for individual meetings with certain beneficiaries. You're one of them." 3 hours later, I sat in Ashford's office, a space that breathed tradition. Law books lined walnut shelves and oil paintings of stern-faced judges watched from the walls. Ashford himself looked like he'd stepped from another era, silver-haired and impeccably dressed. "Your grandmother was a remarkable woman." He began pouring tea from a china service. Also remarkably observant, she kept detailed records about family members. He pulled out a manila folder thick with papers. Before we discuss the estate, I need to share something regarding your sister, Madison. My stomach tightened. What about her? Dorothy hired a private investigator 3 years ago. She'd noticed certain patterns in Madison's behavior. He adjusted his glasses, consulting the file. Were you aware Madison was arrested twice during college for prescription fraud? The room seemed to tilt. What? Once for forging prescriptions, once for stealing medication from her roommate. Both times your parents intervened, hired lawyers, and had the records sealed. They never said anything. My voice sounded distant to my own ears. They went to considerable lengths to hide it, but your grandmother had resources. He showed me photocopied arrest records, case numbers, even bank statements showing large withdrawals marked Madison legal fees. She knew Madison was stealing medication and said nothing. She was gathering evidence. Your grandmother believed in giving people chances to change, but also in protecting those who might be harmed. He turned to another section of the file. She documented Madison's patterns, befriending people with chronic conditions, gaining access to their medications, then moving on when discovered. There were others before me. At least 5 that Dorothy documented. Diabetes medication, ADHD drugs, anxiety prescriptions. Madison seems to target medications with street value. I thought about the family dinner, the pills scattered across the table. She's still doing it. Your grandmother suspected as much, which brings us to the estate. Ashford closed the file and leaned back. Dorothy's will includes specific provisions about beneficiaries who prey on the vulnerable. Her words, not mine. What kind of provisions? Let's just say character will be thoroughly evaluated. Any beneficiary found to be exploiting family members' medical conditions faces consequences. You're being cryptic, Mr. Ashford. He smiled slightly. Estate law requires discretion until the formal reading. However, I'm authorized to investigate each beneficiary's character before distribution. Your grandmother wanted to ensure her legacy didn't enable further harm. Why tell me about Madison's past now? Because you're currently her victim and you deserve to know this isn't your fault. Madison's behavior is a long-established pattern your parents have enabled. He paused. Also because I need your permission to include your current situation in my investigation file. Include it how? Documentation of Madison's ongoing prescription theft, your parents' complicity, the impact on your health and insurance. It's directly relevant to the estate distribution. I signed the permission forms, my mind reeling. All these years my parents had known Madison was a prescription thief and had hidden it. Every family gathering where they'd praised her ambition while criticizing my caution had been a lie. Your grandmother also left something for you. Ashford handed me a sealed envelope. She said to give this to you if Madison ever targeted you. I opened it in the car, my hands trembling. Grandma's familiar handwriting filled the page. My dear Jody, if you're reading this, Madison has shown her true nature, and you're likely feeling betrayed and confused. Please know that none of this is your fault. I've watched Madison manipulate our family for years, always taking from those who can least afford to lose. Your parents enable her because facing the truth would mean acknowledging their failure. They choose willful blindness over difficult honesty. I've structured my estate to protect those who protect themselves and others. Stand firm in your truth. Document everything. Don't let family guilt override your safety. Your epilepsy doesn't make you weak, it makes you vigilant. Use that vigilance now. Madison will escalate when cornered, they always do. Be ready. Trust Thomas Ashford. He has my complete confidence and full authority to investigate any claims against the estate. He also has evidence I've collected over the years that may surprise you. Remember, family isn't about blood. It's about who shows up when you need them, who respects your boundaries, who sees your struggles and offers support, not exploitation. Stay strong, my dear one. Justice may move slowly, but it does move. All my love, Grandma Dorothy. I sat in the parking lot crying, not from sadness, but from validation. Grandma had seen it all, documented it all, and planned for it all. She'd known I might need proof that I wasn't crazy, wasn't overreacting, wasn't the problem. My phone buzzed. Madison, of course. Just heard you met with Ashford. What did he tell you? I didn't respond. Jody, we need to coordinate our stories for the hearing, as a family. Still nothing from me. Fine, be that way. But remember, I know things about you too, like how you conveniently developed epilepsy right when you needed to work from home. I screenshot the message, adding it to my growing evidence file. Madison was getting desperate, throwing wild accusations to see what might stick. Another text. Mom says you've hired a lawyer, really, over a few pills. Then, you're going to lose your insurance anyway. Might as well share the meds while you have them. Each message was more incriminating than the last. Madison couldn't help herself. When cornered, she revealed her true nature in writing. I forwarded everything to Jennifer Walsh and wrote a message to Mr. Ashford. Please add these to the investigation file. Madison is escalating. That night, I reread Grandma's letter until I'd memorized every word. She'd called Madison's pattern years ago, even predicting the escalation. It was like having a road map through a minefield written by someone who'd already watched others get blown up. I thought about the other victims Ashford had mentioned. 5 documented cases before me, probably more undiscovered. How many people had suffered seizures, diabetic crises, mental health emergencies because Madison saw their medicine as inventory? The safe in my closet felt less like paranoia now and more like prudence. Grandma's words echoed, "Use that vigilance now." I pulled out a notebook and began writing my own documentation. Every incident, every threat, every stolen pill. If character was the measure for inheritance, I'd make sure the truth about everyone's character was crystal clear. Madison might have our parents' protection, but I had something better, a grandmother who'd seen the truth and prepared for war. The estate hearing was still 3 weeks away, but the real battle had already begun. Mr. Ashford had been right about one thing: Grandma Dorothy was remarkable. Even from beyond the grave, she was still protecting the vulnerable from the predators, even when those predators were her own grandchildren. The pharmacy on 5th Street had become my second home over the years. The familiar fluorescent lights and medicinal smell usually comforted me, but 3 days before the estate hearing, something felt wrong the moment I walked in. Brian, the head pharmacist, caught my eye immediately. His usual friendly demeanor was replaced with grim professionalism as he motioned me to the consultation window. "Jody, we need to talk privately." His voice was low, urgent. My stomach dropped as I followed him to the small consultation room. He closed the door and pulled up security footage on his computer. "This happened 2 hours ago." He pressed play. The black and white footage showed a woman at the prescription counter. Despite the sunglasses and dark wig, I recognized Madison's posture, her designer handbag, the way she gestured while talking. She tried to fill this. Brian handed me a prescription form. My name was on it, but the handwriting was wrong, the dosage doubled, and Dr. Brennan's signature looked like a child's forgery attempt. She forged a prescription. Poorly. Any first-year pharmacy student would catch this. He paused the video as Madison leaned over the counter. But that's not the worst part. Watch. In the footage, the pharmacy technician shook her head, clearly refusing the prescription. Madison's body language shifted from pleading to aggressive. She pulled out something from her purse, my stolen pill bottle from weeks ago, and waved it at the staff. She claimed to be picking up for you, said she had proof she'd done it before. Brian's jaw was tight. When we still refused, she threatened to report us for discrimination against family caregivers. What happened? I called the police. She ran before they arrived, but we have everything on camera. He handed me a police report number. Detective Ross will want to speak with you. I sank into the chair, overwhelmed. Madison had crossed from theft to forgery, from family betrayal to federal crime. There's more, Brian said gently. We ran a system check after this incident. Someone using variations of your information has attempted to fill prescriptions at 4 other pharmacies in the past week, all rejected, but she's getting desperate. Variations of my information. Same birthday, slightly different addresses, middle initial instead of full name. Classic signs of prescription fraud. He pulled up a map on his computer showing the pharmacy locations. She's hitting places in a circle around the city, probably hoping to find one that's less vigilant. This could destroy my ability to get medication anywhere, which is why I've already contacted your insurance company with a fraud alert. It protects you, but also means extra verification for every fill going forward. His expression was sympathetic. I'm sorry, Jody. I know this isn't your fault. I left with copies of everything: the forged prescription, the security footage, stills, the police report. My phone rang as I reached my car. Detective Amanda Ross wanted to meet immediately. The police station's interview room was sterile, institutional. Detective Ross was younger than I'd expected, maybe mid-30s, with keen eyes that missed nothing. Ms. Matthews, what your sister is doing has expanded beyond simple theft. She spread out files on the table. We've connected her to a prescription fraud ring targeting people with chronic conditions. A ring. She's not working alone anymore. We've identified at least 3 others, all people she met through online support groups she infiltrated. Detective Ross showed me screenshots from Facebook groups for epilepsy, diabetes, and chronic pain. Madison's fake profiles were sophisticated, complete with borrowed medical stories and sympathy-seeking posts. She befriended vulnerable people online, learned their medication schedules, then arranged meetings or home visits to steal pills. The detective's voice was clinical, but I could see anger in her eyes. 2 victims have been hospitalized after missing critical doses. Maria and James, I said, remembering the names from Mr. Ashford's investigation. You know about them. I explained about Grandma's investigation, the documented pattern going back years. Detective Ross took notes rapidly. This establishes a clear pattern of behavior. With the attempted forgery today, we have enough for an arrest warrant. She looked up from her notepad. But I need to warn you, people like Madison often escalate dramatically when facing arrest. Do you have somewhere safe to stay? My apartment has good security. That may not be enough. She knows where you live, your routines, your vulnerabilities. The detective pulled out a card. This is our victim services coordinator. Please consider a temporary relocation until we have her in custody. I drove home in a daze, the full weight of the situation crushing down. Madison wasn't just a selfish sister anymore. She was a calculated predator running a criminal enterprise. My phone had been silent during the police interview. Now it exploded with messages. 17 missed calls from Mom, 12 from Dad, and text after text from unknown numbers. You've ruined everything. Mom, the police came to our house. Dad, this is what happens when you don't share. Unknown. Drop the charges or else. Unknown. You think you're safe in that apartment. Unknown. The last one made my blood freeze. I immediately called Detective Ross, who advised me to pack essentials and leave immediately. I threw together a bag, medication, legal documents, laptop, changes of clothes. As I was grabbing my safe from the closet, I heard something that made me stop breathing. A key in my front door lock. Only 3 people had keys: me, the building manager, and Madison, who I'd given 1 year ago for emergencies, and never thought to get back. The door opened slowly. I could hear whispers Madison wasn't alone. Check the bedroom first, her voice commanded. She keeps the safe in the closet. I slipped out the back door of my bedroom onto the fire escape, clutching my bag and safe. As I climbed down, I could hear them ransacking my apartment. Madison's fury when she realized I was gone echoed off the buildings. From my car, I watched 3 figures flee my building. Madison and 2 people I didn't recognize, all carrying bags, probably filled with whatever they could steal. I called Detective Ross first, then building security. Within 20 minutes, police cars surrounded my building. But Madison was already gone, vanished into the city with her accomplices. We'll find her. Detective Ross assured me as crime scene techs processed my apartment. She's getting sloppy desperate. That's when they make mistakes. That night, from a hotel room paid for by victim services, I sat on an unfamiliar bed, holding my safe like a lifeline. 3 days until the estate hearing. 3 days of hiding from my own sister who'd transformed from family disappointment to actual danger. Brian texted me from the pharmacy. "Stay safe. Your medication will be ready whenever you need it. We've flagged your profile for maximum security." The kindness of strangers had become more reliable than family. As I triple-checked the hotel room locks and set up my medications for the morning, I thought about Grandma's letter. She'd warned me Madison would escalate when cornered. She just hadn't mentioned it might cost me my home, my security, and any remaining faith in family bonds. The little girl who'd once shared my toys had become a woman who'd violate my home to steal my life-saving medication. Tomorrow would bring new battles, but tonight I was safe medicated, and most importantly, aware. Madison had shown her true face not just to me, but to law enforcement. The predator had finally become the prey. The call from Dad came at 7 in the evening one night before the estate hearing. His voice carried that false warmth that always preceded family manipulation. "Jody, we're having a family meeting at the house. It's important you come." After Madison broke into my apartment, I don't think so. "She's not here," he said quickly. "This is about helping you. Please just give us an hour." Every instinct screamed danger, but curiosity won. If they were planning something for tomorrow's hearing, I needed to know. I agreed, but took precautions Jennifer Walsh on speed dial location, sharing with Detective Ross and a voice recorder in my pocket. The house was lit up like Christmas cars lining the street. Through the window, I counted at least 15 family members. My stomach turned. This wasn't a meeting. It was an ambush. Uncle Robert opened the door, his expression uncomfortable. "Jody, come in. Everyone's waiting." The living room had been arranged like an intervention. Chairs in a circle, tissues strategically placed, and my extended family wearing matching expressions of concern. Madison sat in the center, a performance of tears and trembling hands. "Sit," Mom commanded, pointing to a chair directly across from Madison. I remained standing. "What is this?" Aunt Patricia spoke first, clearly designated as the voice of reason. "Jody, we're here because we love you and we're concerned about your addiction." "My what?" "Your dependence on seizure medication," she continued. "Madison's told us everything. How you've been taking more than prescribed, how you got violent when she tried to help." The room nodded in synchronized sympathy. They'd all been fed the same story, swallowed the same lies. "I have epilepsy," I said slowly. "The medication isn't optional. Lots of people claim medical needs to justify addiction," said Cousin Mark, who'd apparently become an expert since I'd seen him last Christmas. "It's actually very common." "Madison only took your pills to protect you from yourself," Mom added. "She's been so worried." Madison dabbed her eyes with a tissue. "I just wanted to help. When I saw how many pills she was taking, I knew something was wrong." The correct dosage prescribed by my neurologist. "Doctors overprescribe all the time," Uncle Ted chimed in. "Pharmaceutical companies push these drugs for profit." I looked around the room, seeing strangers wearing familiar faces. They'd gathered not to support me, but to break me down to rewrite reality until I was the problem. "Show them the police report," I said. "The forged prescriptions, the security footage." "More evidence of your desperation," Madison said softly. "You've involved the police, lawyers, even poor Mr. Ashford, all because your family tried to help. By stealing my medication, by breaking into my apartment." "I have a key," Madison reminded everyone. "That's not breaking in. I was checking on my sister who's been acting erratically." Dad stood moving to the center of the circle. "Jody, we've arranged for you to enter a treatment facility. 30 days to get clean to see that you don't really need all these pills." "The facility is very nice," Aunt Patricia added. "They specialize in prescription dependency." My hands were shaking now, not from seizures, but from rage. "You want to send me to rehab for taking prescribed anti-seizure medication?" "We want to help you get well," Mom said. Madison's already agreed to manage your medications during treatment to ensure you're not tempted. There it was, the real plan. Lock me away, give Madison legal control over my prescriptions, and probably my vote for the estate hearing. No, I said simply. This isn't a request. Dad's voice hardened. We've already spoken to a judge about temporary guardianship. Your erratic behavior, the paranoid accusations, the hostility toward family, it all supports our petition. What judge would... I stopped remembering. Uncle Robert's golf buddy was a family court judge, of course. Madison leaned forward, victory gleaming in her eyes. I know this is hard, but I'll take good care of your medications while you're getting help. I promise to give you exactly what you need. To sell, you mean? There she goes again. Mom threw up her hands. These delusions about Madison selling pills. Do you hear how crazy that sounds? Then let's call Detective Ross. Let her explain the prescription fraud ring Madison's running. More paranoia, someone muttered. I pulled out my phone, but Dad snatched it away. No phones during intervention. It's a distraction from healing. Give me my phone. When you agree to get help. The circle tightened, family members standing, moving closer. The message was clear: agree or be forced. You can't hold me here, I said, backing toward the door. Uncle Ted blocked my path. Actually, if we believe you're a danger to yourself, we can. Taking prescribed medication makes me dangerous. Addiction makes people unpredictable. Madison said, standing now too. I should know. I've been dealing with your mood swings for weeks. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a pill bottle. My medication, the stolen ones from weeks ago. She shook them like a rattle. These have been controlling your life, but we're going to free you. That's when she made her critical mistake. In her performance, she'd pulled out multiple bottles, laying them on the coffee table like evidence. Look how many she hoards, Madison said dramatically. But Cousin Beth, the nurse who'd defended me at dinner, leaned forward. Madison, these prescriptions all have different names. The room paused. Beth picked up a bottle. This one says Maria Gonzalez. This one says James Chen. She looked up, realization dawning. These aren't Jody's pills. I was holding them for friends, Madison stammered. Multiple friends gave you their prescription medications. Beth's nursing instincts had kicked in. That's illegal and dangerous. You don't understand, Madison started, but Beth was already examining the bottles. These are all seizure medications, diabetes drugs, controlled substances. Madison, where did you get these? The carefully orchestrated intervention began to crack. Family members looked at the pile of bottles, then at Madison, then at me. She's been stealing from other patients, I said quietly. There's a police investigation, multiple victims. Lies, Madison shouted, but her mask was slipping. Call Detective Ross, I challenged. Ask her about the prescription fraud ring, about the forged prescriptions, about the other victims in the hospital. Madison lunged for the bottles, trying to sweep them back into her bag, but Beth held firm. Other family members were pulling out phones, Googling, finding the news stories about prescription theft rings, targeting chronic patients. Is this true? Aunt Patricia asked, her intervention voice wavering. Madison's answer was to bolt for the door, or try to. Uncle Robert, the one who'd let me in now, blocked her exit. I think we all need to calm down, he said, but he wasn't looking at me anymore. Mom found her voice. Madison, explain this now. Instead of explaining, Madison turned on me with pure venom. This is all your fault. If you'd just shared, none of this would have happened. You've always been selfish, using your fake illness to get attention to seem special. Fake illness. Beth's voice was ice. Epilepsy isn't fake. It's a serious neurological condition. She's exaggerating. She probably doesn't even need those pills. Then why steal them? Uncle Ted asked, the logic finally penetrating. If they don't do anything, why take them? Madison had no answer. The room full of family who'd gathered to break me down was now looking at her with dawning horror. The police report is real, Dad asked me, his voice small. I nodded. The breaking and entering, the forged prescriptions, all of it. But we were so sure. Mom trailed off, looking at Madison like she'd never seen her before. "You were so sure because Madison told you what you wanted to hear," I said. "That I was the problem, that my medical needs were negotiable, that sharing meant letting her steal." My phone rang in Dad's hand. Detective Ross's number showed on the screen. He handed it to me wordlessly. "Ms. Matthews, we've located your sister's vehicle. Are you safe?" "I'm at my parents' house. Madison's here too with evidence." "Stay there. Units are on the way." I hung up and looked at my family. "The police are coming. Anyone who wants to leave should go now." The exodus was immediate. Cousins suddenly remembered commitments, aunts had early mornings, uncles needed to check on things. Within minutes, only my parents, Beth, Robert, and Madison remained. "You called the cops on your own sister," Madison hissed. "You stole my medication and sold it to students. You broke into my home. You forged prescriptions." I kept my voice steady despite my shaking hands. "You called the cops on yourself." Sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. Madison made one last attempt to grab the pill bottles from Beth, who simply stepped back and shook her head. "I was trying to help people," Madison said desperately. "Students who needed focus, people who couldn't afford prescriptions. I was doing good." "You were profiting off stolen medication while the real patients suffered," Beth replied. "That's not help. That's exploitation." The sirens were outside now. Through the window, I could see Detective Ross stepping out of an unmarked car, uniformed officers behind her. Madison looked at our parents one last time. "Aren't you going to do something?" But Mom and Dad stood frozen, the weight of their enabling finally crushing down on them. They'd orchestrated an intervention for the wrong daughter, chosen the predator over the prey, and now the consequences were at their door. As Detective Ross entered, I felt no satisfaction, only exhaustion. The family that had gathered to force me into treatment would instead witness Madison's arrest. The intervention had revealed the truth, just not the truth they'd expected. Tomorrow's estate hearing would happen without Madison. Grandma's test of character had been answered before we even reached the courthouse. The vulnerable had been identified, the predators exposed, and justice was finally knocking at the door. Beth caught up with me in the driveway as police processed the scene inside. Her face showed the shell-shocked expression of someone whose worldview had just shattered. "Jody, I'm so sorry. When they called about the intervention, I thought—" She shook her head. "I should have known better." "You figured it out when it mattered," I said, grateful for even delayed support. "Can I buy you coffee away from—" She gestured at the chaos behind us. "All this." 20 minutes later, we sat in a quiet diner, the kind that served breakfast all day and didn't ask questions about customers who looked like they'd been through hell. "I need to tell you something," Beth said, wrapping her hands around her mug. "At the hospital where I work, we've been seeing more patients coming in with seizures, diabetic emergencies, psychiatric crises, all saying their medication was stolen by someone they trusted." "Madison's victims?" "I think so. I started keeping informal notes after tonight made me suspicious." She pulled out her phone, showing me a secure notes app. Maria Gonzalez, the teacher. She had a grand mal seizure in front of her third-grade class. The kids were traumatized. She lost her job because the school board deemed her unsafe around children. My coffee turned to acid in my stomach because her medication was stolen. She told the ER staff someone from her support group had visited, said she was collecting expired medications for disposal. Maria trusted her. Next thing, her entire supply was gone. What happened to her? Last I heard, she'd moved back in with her parents. Couldn't afford the medication without insurance, couldn't work without medication. Madison destroyed her life for what, a few $100s in street value. Beth scrolled to another entry. James Chen, college senior, pre-med student with temporal lobe epilepsy, perfectly controlled for years, until someone befriended him in an online support group, offered to pick up his prescriptions during finals week as a favor. Let me guess the prescriptions never made it to him. He went into status epilepticus during his MCAT exam, seized for 12 minutes. By the time paramedics got him stabilized, he had significant memory issues. His dreams of medical school gone. Each story was worse than the last. A single mother who lost custody when she had a seizure at a supervised visitation. An elderly man whose diabetes spiraled out of control, leading to amputation. A teenager who attempted suicide when her bipolar medication suddenly vanished. How many? I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted to know. At least 12 that I can confirm from our hospital alone. Who knows how many others went to different ERs or suffered in silence. My phone buzzed. Detective Ross. Your sister is in custody. Can you come to the station tomorrow morning? The other victims want to meet you. I showed Beth the message. She immediately offered to come with me. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Maria's third graders watching their teacher convulse. James missing his dreams by minutes. Lives destroyed for Madison's profit margins. The next morning, the police station's community room held 9 people besides Beth and me. Different ages, races, backgrounds, but all wearing the same expression of exhausted vindication. Maria spoke first. Her voice was soft but steady. When I reported the theft, everyone said I must have misplaced my pills, that I was being careless. Even my principal suggested I was making excuses for poor medication management. Same here, said James. The university disciplinary board accused me of selling my pills to other students, said the seizure was karma. My own parents believed them over me. One by one, they shared their stories. The gaslighting from authorities, the victim blaming from family, the spiral of lost jobs, relationships, and hope, all because Madison had seen their vulnerabilities as opportunities. She was so convincing, said an older woman named Ruth. Talked about her own struggles with chronic illness, how she understood the burden. I thought I'd found a friend. The fake profiles were sophisticated, Detective Ross confirmed. She spent months building trust in online communities before identifying targets, always chose people who were isolated or struggling, less likely to have strong support systems. Predator's instinct, someone muttered. What's happening with the case? Maria asked. With Jody's evidence and all of your testimonies, we have enough for federal charges. Prescription fraud across state lines, organized crime, aggravated assault for the medical emergencies caused. Detective Ross looked at each of us. She's looking at 15 to 20 years minimum. The room was quiet processing this. Justice, but at such a cost. There's something else, I said, pulling out the letter from Grandma Dorothy. My grandmother knew about Madison's history. She documented victims going back years. I read parts of the letter aloud. Several people cried hearing validation from someone they'd never met. Your grandmother sounds like she understood, Ruth said. Sometimes family sees clearly what others refuse to acknowledge. We spent the next 2 hours sharing resources, exchanging contact information, building the support network Madison had pretended to offer. Beth distributed information about prescription assistance programs and legitimate support groups with verification processes. As the meeting ended, Maria approached me. The estate hearing is today, right? I nodded, having almost forgotten in the chaos. Good luck. Your grandmother would be proud that you stood up to her. She paused. I wish I'd had someone like her in my corner. Outside the police station, the other victims gathered around me. 9 people whose lives had been derailed, but who'd still come to support a stranger facing the same predator. We'll be there if you need us, James said. For the trial, the hearings, whatever. Same, echoed the others. As Beth drove me to the courthouse for the estate hearing, I thought about community. My blood family had gathered to break me down, but these strangers had come together to build each other up. We'd found family in the wreckage Madison had left behind. You know what's remarkable? Beth said, navigating downtown traffic. Every single person there is still fighting, still taking their medication, still managing their conditions, still living. Madison tried to destroy them, but she failed. She was right. We were all still here, still fighting, still refusing to let a predator define our lives. Grandma Dorothy had written about protecting the vulnerable, but she'd underestimated us. We weren't just vulnerable. We were survivors. The courthouse loomed ahead, and with it the final chapter of Grandma's test of character. But I wasn't walking in alone anymore. I carried the strength of every person Madison had hurt, every life she'd tried to destroy, every survivor who'd refused to stay silent. Madison had stolen medications, but she couldn't steal our voices. Today at the estate hearing, those voices would finally be heard. "Ready?" Beth asked as we parked. "Ready," I said and meant it. The other victims had given me something more valuable than any inheritance, the knowledge that standing up to predators, even family predators, was not just right, but necessary. Their courage had become my courage, their survival, my inspiration. Time to face whatever waited inside that courtroom, carrying the strength of a community forged in shared pain, but united in determination. Madison had brought us together in the worst way possible, but we'd transformed that connection into something she could never steal: hope. I woke at 5:30, my hands already trembling with the familiar pre-seizure warning. The stress of the past weeks had been building like pressure in a valve, and my body was sending clear signals that it couldn't take much more. My medication routine had become a ritual of survival. I counted each pill twice, photographed the bottles, and documented the time in my journal. The lawyers had advised this level of detail, but it also gave me something to control when everything else felt chaotic. Jennifer Walsh called while I was getting dressed. "Jody, I'll meet you at the courthouse at 8:30. Detective Ross will be there too with the criminal evidence." "Will Madison be there?" The thought made my stomach clench. "She's currently in custody, but her lawyer might petition for her to attend. We'll know when we arrive." Jennifer paused. "How are you feeling? Any medical concerns?" I glanced at my trembling hands. "Some warning signs, but I've taken my medication. I'll manage." "Bring your emergency doses. Judge Reeves is aware of your condition and has authorized medical accommodations if needed." After we hung up, I packed carefully medication water, protein bars, and all my documentation in a leather portfolio Grandma had given me years ago. It seemed fitting to carry her final gift in something she'd chosen. Beth arrived at 7:45, professional in her scrubs, since she'd have to leave for a hospital shift after the hearing. "I've got your back," she said simply, and I believed her. The drive downtown was quiet, each of us lost in thought. As we neared the courthouse, I saw the media vans. Of course, a prescription fraud ring targeting disabled patients was newsworthy, especially when it involved a prominent family's estate battle. "Ignore them," Beth advised as reporters noticed our arrival. "You don't owe anyone your story." Inside the courthouse buzzed with unusual energy. Security was heightened with officers checking bags more thoroughly than normal. We found Jennifer in the lobby, impeccably dressed and radiating confidence. "Good news and bad news," she said, leading us toward a private conference room. Madison's lawyer successfully petitioned for her to attend via video link from jail, but the judge has strict parameters about her participation. In the conference room, Detective Ross waited with boxes of evidence. "The criminal case is solid," she assured me. "Multiple victims have agreed to testify. We've documented over $200,000 in illegal prescription sales." 200,000. The number staggered me. Conservative estimate. Madison was moving serious volume targeting multiple cities. This wasn't opportunistic theft, it was a business model. Mr. Ashford entered looking every inch the Southern gentleman despite the early hour. "Ms. Matthews, I've reviewed all the evidence Detective Ross provided. Your grandmother would be unsurprised but deeply saddened." She knew this day would come. She hoped it wouldn't, but prepared for if it did. He pulled out a sealed envelope. She left additional instructions to be opened only if criminal charges were filed against any beneficiary. Today qualifies. My parents arrived while we were reviewing documents. They looked haggard, aged years in weeks. Mom's designer outfit couldn't hide the shadows under her eyes, and Dad moved like he was carrying invisible weight. They hesitated when they saw me, uncertainty replacing their usual confidence. The role reversal was stark. They'd always been the ones in control, the ones who knew better. Now they looked lost. "Jody," Mom started, then stopped. What was there to say? Other relatives filed in the family divided into visible camps. Those who'd been at the intervention avoided eye contact with me. Others who'd heard about Madison's arrest offered tentative smiles of support. At 9:15, court staff called us into the main courtroom. It was smaller than I'd expected, wood-paneled and formal, but not intimidating. Judge Patricia Reeves presided, a woman in her 60s with sharp eyes and an air of absolute authority. This estate matter has taken on additional complexity. She began once everyone was seated. We have criminal charges pending against a beneficiary documentation of systematic theft and medical endangerment of another beneficiary. We'll proceed carefully but thoroughly. A screen on the wall flickered to life, showing Madison in orange jail clothes. Even through the video link, her defiance was palpable. She'd styled her hair and applied makeup, somehow determined to maintain her image. Ms. Madison Matthews, you have the right to be present for these proceedings, but any disruption will result in your feed being cut. Is that understood? Yes, Your Honor, Madison replied, her voice tinny through the speakers. Judge Reeves turned to Mr. Ashford. Let's begin with Dorothy Matthews' original will and the conditions she set forth. As Mr. Ashford stood to read Grandma's words, my hands trembled more noticeably. The stress was building, and I could feel the aura creeping in despite my medication. I quietly took one of my emergency doses, hoping to stave off what my body was threatening. Beth noticed my movements and shifted closer, a silent support. Jennifer made a note, prepared to request medical accommodation if needed. Dorothy Matthews' will, executed 14 months ago, states, "My estate shall be distributed based on demonstration of true character, with special consideration for those who protect the vulnerable and harsh consequence for those who prey upon them." Mom shifted uncomfortably. Dad stared at his hands. On the screen, Madison's expression had gone carefully blank. Mr. Ashford continued reading, but my vision was starting to narrow. The familiar tunnel effect that preceded my worst seizures. I gripped the edge of the table, trying to ground myself. Furthermore, Mr. Ashford read, any beneficiary found to have stolen from, endangered, or exploited another family member's medical condition shall forfeit all claims to the estate, with their portion redistributed to their victims. Objection. Madison's voice cut through the speakers. That's not legally binding. You can't retroactively punish someone for... Ms. Matthews, Judge Reeves interrupted coldly, you're on thin ice. One more outburst and you'll be removed from these proceedings. But the damage was done. The stress of hearing Madison's voice, of being in the same virtual space as my tormentor, pushed my overtaxed system past its limit. The aura intensified, and I knew with sinking certainty that my medication wasn't going to be enough. Your Honor, Jennifer said urgently, my client needs medical attention. That's when I noticed Madison on the screen laughing. Even facing federal charges, even in jail clothes, she couldn't resist one last moment of cruelty. There she goes, Madison said loudly enough for everyone to hear. Right on cue. Watch, she'll have her little performance right when things get interesting. The rage that flooded through me was matched only by the electrical storm building in my brain. My vision fractured the courtroom, tilting at impossible angles. I tried to speak, but the words wouldn't come. Beth was already moving, calling for the medical kit she knew courtrooms kept. Jennifer was demanding the court officer call for paramedics. But I could only focus on Madison's face on that screen, still smirking, still so certain I was faking. The last coherent thought I had before the seizure hit was bitter irony. Madison had claimed I used my condition for attention, that I was being dramatic. Now she'd have a front row seat to see exactly how real my epilepsy was. My body betrayed me in the most public way possible in front of the judge who would decide our family's future, in front of relatives who doubted my illness, in front of the sister who'd stolen my medication for profit. As consciousness fled and my muscles began their violent dance, I heard Judge Reeves' voice cutting through the chaos. Get that woman off my screen, now! Then darkness claimed me, and Madison's laughter was replaced by the sounds of people trying to save my life. The world exploded into fragments of sensation. I was dimly aware of falling, my body no longer under my control. The carpeted courtroom floor rushed up to meet me, but hands caught me before impact, lowering me down gently. "Everyone back." Beth's commanding nurse voice cut through the chaos. "Give her space. Someone time this." Through the electrical storm in my brain, I could hear everything, but respond to nothing. My muscles contracted violently, rhythmically, each spasm sending lightning through my nerves. This wasn't one of my smaller focal seizures that I could sometimes hide. This was grand mal generalized tonic-clonic, the kind that had hospitalized me during my first diagnosis. 3 minutes, someone called out. "Where are those paramedics?" Jennifer's voice tight with worry. "Turn her on her side," Beth instructed someone. "Support her head, don't restrain her." I could feel hands positioning me, protecting me from injury, even as my body thrashed against their care. The seizure felt endless, each second stretching into hours of neural chaos. My jaw clenched so hard I tasted blood. 4 minutes, the same voice reported, now alarmed. 4 minutes was too long. Even in my fractured state, I knew that. Status epilepticus, when seizures don't stop on their own, could cause permanent damage. Judge Reeves' voice boomed above the rest. "Clear this courtroom of all non-essential personnel. Now," footsteps thundered around me as people evacuated. But some stayed, Beth's hands steady on my shoulders, Jennifer's voice advocating fiercely for my needs, and surprisingly, the judge herself. "Your Honor, you should evacuate too," someone suggested. "I'm staying," Judge Reeves replied firmly. "This young woman is seizing because of crimes committed against her. The court will bear witness." The irony wasn't lost even in my impaired state. Madison had accused me of faking for attention, and now a judge was refusing to look away from the reality of my condition. 4 minutes, 30 seconds. "Where are those damn paramedics?" That was Detective Ross, her professional composure cracking. Then, as suddenly as it began, the seizure released me. My muscles went limp, the electrical storm quieting to aftershocks. But I couldn't move, couldn't speak, couldn't even open my eyes. The postictal state, the period after a seizure, held me in a different kind of prison. "She's breathing," Beth announced. "Pulse is rapid but strong." "Jody, can you hear me?" Jennifer's voice close to my ear. "Squeeze my hand if you can hear me." I tried, but my fingers wouldn't obey. My brain was rebooting neural pathways, slowly coming back online. I could hear the paramedics arriving, feel them taking over my care, but responding was beyond me. Status epilepticus event lasted approximately 4 minutes 40 seconds, Beth reported clinically. Patient has documented epilepsy on anti-seizure medication. Recent medication theft by family member likely contributed to breakthrough seizure. "We need to transport immediately," one paramedic said. "I'm going with her." Judge Reeves announced, shocking everyone. "This is a court matter that directly resulted in medical endangerment. I need to see this through." As they lifted me onto a gurney, I managed to open my eyes slightly. The courtroom was in chaos, overturned chairs, scattered papers, my family pressed against the walls, looking stricken. The video screen where Madison had been was dark, mercifully turned off. "You're okay," Beth whispered, walking alongside the gurney. "You're safe now." But as we passed my parents, I heard Mom sob, "What have we done?" The ambulance ride was a blur of medical terminology and gentle care. Judge Reeves sat opposite me, her judicial robes incongruous in the medical setting. She held my hand. This stern woman who commanded courtrooms was offering human comfort to a stranger. "Ms. Matthews," she said softly, though I don't know if she expected me to hear, "I've presided over thousands of cases. I've seen every kind of family dysfunction. But watching you seize while your sister laughed, that's a cruelty that defies comprehension." At the hospital, Dr. Brennan was already waiting. "Jody, it's Sarah. You're at General. You had a seizure at the courthouse, but you're safe now." I tried to speak, managed only a croak. "Don't try to talk yet. The postictal state can last hours after a seizure this severe." She turned to someone I couldn't see. Get me her complete medication history and recent blood levels. I want to know exactly how subtherapeutic she was. Judge Reeves stayed while they ran tests, blood work, and scans. I drifted in and out of awareness, catching fragments of conversation. Medication levels dangerously low despite compliant dosing. The stress-induced breakthrough seizure. Criminal negligence resulting in medical emergency. Hours passed before I could reliably form words. My first coherent question was, the hearing. Judge Reeves leaned forward from her chair beside my bed. Postponed pending your recovery. But Jody, we need to discuss what happened. Madison laughed. My voice was hoarse, weak. I saw. The entire court saw. Her expression was grave. Your sister revealed her true nature in that moment. No one who witnessed your seizure could doubt its authenticity or severity. Jennifer arrived with paperwork and updates. The criminal charges against Madison have been upgraded. Witnessing you seize while knowing she'd stolen your medication. The prosecutor is adding attempted murder charges. That seems extreme, I protested weakly. She knew you could die without medication. She stole it anyway. She watched you seize and laughed. Jennifer's voice was steel. That's attempted murder in my book. Dr. Brennan returned with test results. Your blood showed subtherapeutic medication levels. Even taking your prescribed doses, the chronic stress depleted your reserves faster than normal. Add the acute stress of seeing your attacker, and your brain couldn't cope. Will it happen again? We're adjusting your dosages and adding a supplementary medication for breakthrough seizures. But honestly, she sat on the edge of my bed. The best medicine would be removing the stressors from your life. Judge Reeves stood. On that note, I'm making an emergency ruling. Given the medical endangerment witnessed today, Madison Matthews is barred from any contact with you, direct or indirect. This includes through family members acting as intermediaries. You can do that? I can, and I am. I'm also ordering an expedited hearing for the estate matter. You shouldn't have to wait in limbo while recovering from crimes committed against you. She gathered her things. Ms. Matthews, I've been a judge for 20 years. I've never accompanied a victim to the hospital before, but what happened in my courtroom today, that was a grave injustice that occurred under my watch. After she left, Jennifer and I sat in silence for a moment. Madison really didn't believe you were sick, Jennifer finally said. Even with all the evidence, all the documentation, she thought you were faking. She knows now, I replied, exhausted. But did she? Or was Madison so deep in her own delusions that she'd find a way to twist even this? Would she claim I'd induced the seizure, somehow timed it for maximum impact? Beth arrived for her evening shift but stopped by my room first. The entire family is in the waiting room. They want to see you. Let them wait, Jennifer said firmly. Jody needs rest, not more family drama. But I thought about Grandma's letter about showing character. Send in Beth first, I decided. Then, we'll see. As I lay in that hospital bed, a few lines replacing the medications Madison had stolen, I realized something had shifted. The seizure had been horrible, traumatic, everything I'd fought to avoid. But it had also been witnessed truth. No one who saw me convulse on that courtroom floor could deny my reality anymore. Madison had wanted attention, she'd gotten it. The entire court had seen her cruelty laid bare, watched her laugh at my suffering. Judge Reeves had seen the direct line from theft to seizure, from Madison's greed to my convulsions. Sometimes truth comes in the worst possible ways. Today it had come in 4 minutes and 40 seconds of violent neural misfiring in front of witnesses who could no longer look away. The war for Grandma's estate would continue, but the battle for truth was over. My epilepsy was real. Madison's cruelty was documented, and justice finally had eyes to see. I regained full consciousness to find Judge Patricia Reeves sitting in the visitor's chair, still in her judicial robes. Her presence was so unexpected that for a moment I thought I was hallucinating a side effect of the seizure. "You're awake," she said, setting aside a folder she'd been reading. "Good. We need to talk." "Your Honor." My voice came out scratchy and confused. "Why are you here?" She poured water from the bedside pitcher, helping me take small sips. "Because what happened in my courtroom was a travesty of justice that I intend to correct. I've been reviewing your files while you recovered." "Is that allowed?" A slight smile crossed her stern features. "When someone has a life-threatening seizure in my courtroom due to criminal actions, I make it my business to understand why. I've spoken with Dr. Brennan, Detective Ross, and Mr. Ashford. And your grandmother was a very wise woman." She pulled out a document. I recognized the sealed letter Mr. Ashford had mentioned. She anticipated this exact scenario. "May I?" I nodded, curiosity overcoming exhaustion. Judge Reeves broke the seal and began reading aloud. "To the presiding judge over my estate. If you are reading this, then my worst fears have been realized. A family member has committed acts of medical endangerment against another family member, likely Madison against Jody. I write this with full mental capacity and deep sorrow. I have enclosed evidence collected over 3 years of Madison's pattern of prescription theft targeting vulnerable individuals. I hired private investigators and maintained detailed records because I knew the family would enable her behavior rather than face hard truths. My estate distribution was designed as a trap for give an old woman her theatrical tendencies. I needed Madison to reveal her true nature in a legal setting, where it could not be ignored or excused. The language about character was deliberately vague to encourage her to act out her worst impulses. If Jody has suffered medical harm due to Madison's actions, I direct that the entire estate be placed in trust for her exclusive benefit, not as favoritism, but as justice. She will need resources to recover from what the family has allowed to happen. To Madison, should she read this, I loved you, but I could not save you from yourself. Your parents' enabling made you bold, but consequences were always going to find you. To Jody, you were the only one who never asked me for money, who visited without agenda, who saw me as a grandmother rather than a bank account. Take the resources I leave and build a life free from those who would harm you. You deserve peace. Signed and witnessed, Dorothy Matthews. The silence after Judge Reeves finished reading was profound. My grandmother had orchestrated all of this, the vague will, the character test, even anticipating that Madison would escalate to the point of causing me physical harm. There's more, Judge Reeves said, pulling out photographs and documents. Your grandmother's private investigator documented 12 victims over 3 years. She built a federal case and left it dormant, waiting. Why didn't she act on it while alive? Would you have believed her? Would the family? Judge Reeves shook her head. She knew Madison would have to expose herself completely before anyone would accept the truth. She just hoped it wouldn't cost you so much. Dr. Brennan knocked and entered. Jody, your blood tests show you'll need to stay overnight. The seizure depleted your medication reserves significantly. I'll stay until she's released, Judge Reeves announced, shocking both of us. Your Honor, that's not necessary. Ms. Matthews, you had a seizure in my courtroom because I allowed a criminal to participate in proceedings. I failed in my duty to protect you. The least I can do is ensure you're safe now. Dr. Brennan and Judge Reeves exchanged a look of understanding before the doctor left. Once alone, the judge's professional mask slipped slightly. I had a daughter with epilepsy, she said quietly. Lost her 15 years ago to SUDEP's sudden, unexpected death in epilepsy patients. She was 22. I'm so sorry. She died because her roommate had been stealing her medication to sell. By the time we realized what was happening, her seizures were out of control. She straightened in her chair. So you see, this case is personal for me. Madison's cruelty, your family's enabling, I've seen where it leads. We sat in comfortable silence until Jennifer arrived with updates. Madison's lawyer is trying to claim diminished capacity due to addiction issues. Says she's a victim too. Judge Reeves' expression hardened. She laughed while Ms. Matthews seized. That's not addiction. That's sadism. The prosecutor agrees. They're moving forward with the attempted murder charge plus 23 counts of prescription fraud. Jennifer consulted her notes. Also, the other victims want to testify at the estate hearing. I'll allow it, Judge Reeves said immediately. Madison's crimes are directly relevant to the character assessment Dorothy Matthews required. A knock interrupted us. Beth peered in. Jody, your parents are insisting on seeing you. They're agitated. Let them in. I decided, feeling protected with the judge and Jennifer present. Mom and Dad entered looking like strangers wearing familiar faces. The confident parents who'd orchestrated an intervention just days ago were gone, replaced by hollow-eyed people facing the consequences of their choices. Jody, Mom started, then noticed Judge Reeves. Your Honor, we didn't expect. Sit, Judge Reeves commanded. They sat. Do you understand that your daughter nearly died today? She's always been dramatic about her condition. Dad said automatically, then blanched as he realized what he'd said. Dramatic. Judge Reeves' voice could have frozen fire. I watched her convulse for 4 minutes and 40 seconds. Is that dramatics, Mr. Matthews? We didn't mean... You enabled a prescription drug dealer who targeted your disabled daughter. You physically prevented her from retrieving stolen medication. You attempted to force her into unnecessary rehabilitation. The judge's litany was damning. And even now, witnessing her in a hospital bed, you minimize her suffering. Mom was crying, but it felt performative. We just wanted to help Madison. She's our daughter, too. And that excuse is endangering Jody's life. We didn't know, Dad protested. Didn't know what? I found my voice weak but clear. That I have epilepsy. That medication prevents seizures. That Madison has a history of prescription theft you've been covering up since college. They couldn't meet my eyes. Judge Reeves pulled out her phone. I'm calling security. Mr. and Mrs. Matthews, you're barred from this room. Any attempt to contact your daughter during her recovery will be considered witness intimidation. You can't, Dad started. I can, and I will. You participated in the systematic medical abuse of your daughter. You're lucky you're not under arrest yourselves. She stood every inch the authority figure. Leave now. They left Mom sobbing more genuinely now Dad's shoulders slumped in defeat. But even then, neither apologized to me. Neither acknowledged what they'd done. They'll never understand, I said once they were gone. In their minds, they're still the victims. Enablers usually see themselves that way. Judge Reeves agreed. But their understanding isn't required for justice. The rest of the evening passed quietly. Judge Reeves worked on her laptop while I dozed, the post-seizure exhaustion overwhelming. When I woke, she was reading Grandma's investigative files, her expression growing more severe with each page. Your grandmother documented everything, she said when she noticed I was awake. Madison's college arrests your parents' payoffs the escalating pattern of theft. She even predicted Madison would eventually target you. Why didn't she warn me directly? Would you have believed her? Or would family loyalty have made you dismiss it as grandmotherly paranoia? She was right. Even a year ago, I would have defended Madison, made excuses, assumed Grandma was being overly suspicious. It had taken being victimized myself to see the truth. The estate hearing will reconvene in 3 days, Judge Reeves announced. That gives you time to recover and the other victims time to prepare testimony. Madison will participate from jail, no video feed this time. She's lost the privilege of direct participation. Will my family be there? They have the right to attend, but they'll be under strict behavioral orders. One word minimizing your condition or defending Madison and they'll be removed. She closed the laptop. Justice may be blind, but she's not stupid. What your family did to you was unconscionable. As visiting hours ended, Judge Reeves prepared to leave. I'll have security posted overnight. You're safe here. Thank you, I said, meaning more than just the security. For believing me, for staying, for caring. Thank your grandmother, she replied. She made sure someone would. Alone finally, I thought about Grandma's letter. She'd called me the only one who visited without agenda, who saw her as a grandmother rather than a bank account. But she'd been orchestrating this complex trap the entire time, seeing moves ahead like a chess master. Had she known it would cost me a public seizure? Had she weighed my suffering against Madison's exposure and decided it was worth it? Or had she hoped Madison would reveal herself without harming me? I'd never know. But lying in that hospital bed, medication flowing through IVs to replace what stress and theft had depleted, I understood something Grandma had given me more than potential inheritance. She'd given me validation, protection, and most importantly, proof that someone in my family had seen the truth. Tomorrow would bring more battles, but tonight I had a judge standing guard over justice, a grandmother's validation from beyond the grave, and the knowledge that truth had finally won its day in court. 3 days later, I entered a makeshift courtroom at the hospital's conference center. Judge Reeves had ordered the venue changed to accommodate my medical needs. Dr. Brennan insisted I shouldn't travel yet, and the judge agreed that my health took precedence over courthouse tradition. The room was smaller than the original courtroom, more intimate. The victims of Madison's theft ring sat in the front row, Maria James Ruth, and 6 others I'd met at the police station. My family occupied the opposite side, creating a visible divide between predators and prey. Madison appeared on a small screen, her jail video feed limited to audio only at Judge Reeves' directive. She could hear everything but couldn't perform for the camera. The loss of visual control was clearly agitating her. We could hear her shifting, sighing occasionally, muttering. "We're reconvening the matter of Dorothy Matthews' estate," Judge Reeves began. "Since our last session, significant evidence has emerged. Mr. Ashford, please present Dorothy Matthews' sealed letter." Thomas Ashford stood the formal letter in his hands. "Your Honor, Dorothy Matthews included specific instructions that this letter be read only if a beneficiary caused medical harm to another beneficiary through theft or neglect. Given Ms. Jody Matthews' seizure resulting from medication theft, the conditions have been met." "Proceed," Judge Reeves instructed. Mr. Ashford's cultured voice filled the room as he read. "To my family and the court. I write this with a heavy heart but clear conscience. By the time this is read, Madison will have revealed her true nature through actions against Jody, and you will all have seen what I've known for years. Madison Elizabeth Matthews is a predator who targets the vulnerable. I first noticed this pattern when she was 16, stealing anxiety medication from her friend Emma, who subsequently had a panic attack during Sati's. Her parents, my son David and daughter-in-law Linda, paid off Emma's family and had the incident buried. In college, Madison expanded her operation. 2 arrests for prescription fraud, both covered up with family money. She targeted students with ADHD, chronic pain, and mental health conditions. When caught, she played victim, claiming addiction issues she didn't have. I hired private investigator Clarence Rothwell 3 years ago when I learned Madison was joining online support groups for people with chronic illnesses. Not because she was ill, but because she was hunting. The enclosed evidence documents 12 victims over 3 years, though I suspect there are more. I remained silent, gathering evidence because I knew my family wouldn't believe me. David and Linda see only what they want to see. The rest of the family follows their lead, but I watched, documented, and planned. My will's vague language about character was deliberate bait. I knew Madison would see Jody's medications as an opportunity, especially with a large inheritance at stake. I knew the family would enable her as they always have, and I knew that only a crisis would force the truth into the open. To Jody, I'm sorry, my dear one. I used you as bait to catch a predator, knowing you were strong enough to survive, but hoping you wouldn't have to suffer. If you're reading this, then you did suffer, and for that, I am deeply, deeply sorry. But know this, everything I have is yours, not because you're my favorite, but because you're the only one who never saw me as a resource to be exploited. You visited me in the nursing home when others forgot. You brought me tea and conversation, not requests for money. You showed character when no one was watching. To Madison, you were given every advantage, every second chance, every excuse. Your parents' enabling turned you from a troubled teen into a calculating criminal. This ends now. To David and Linda, You failed both your daughters. You sacrificed Jody's safety for Madison's comfort. You chose willful blindness over difficult truths. Live with that. To the rest of the family, you participated in Jody's abuse through your silence and complicity. When you chose Madison's lies over Jody's life, you revealed your character. Remember that when you receive nothing from this estate. To the court, I request that my entire estate, valued at approximately $2.3 million plus, the Savannah property, be placed in trust for Jody Matthews. Furthermore, I request that $500,000 be set aside for a victims fund to help those Madison harmed recover what was stolen from them. The evidence I've gathered is attached. Use it to ensure Madison faces justice and her victims find peace. I go to my grave heartbroken that my family chose enable a predator over protecting the innocent, but I also go knowing I've done what I could to make it right. Signed with love for Jody and sorrow for the rest, Dorothy Ann Matthews. The silence after the reading was absolute. Even Madison's fidgeting had stopped. Mom broke first a wail of disbelief. She can't do this. We're her children too. Mrs. Matthews. Judge Reeves said coldly, your mother documented your complicity in multiple crimes. Be grateful you're not under arrest. But we didn't know. Page 12 of the evidence file. Mr. Ashford interrupted. Shows a canceled check for $50,000 to Emma Hartley's family. Your signature is on it, Mrs. Matthews. Page 18 shows another for Madison's first college arrest. Page 24. Stop, Dad said quietly. Just stop. The other victims were crying. Maria held Ruth's hand while James stared at the screen where Madison remained silent. Your Honor. Jennifer Walsh stood. I'd like to point out that Mrs. Dorothy Matthews' investigation corroborates every claim my client made. The theft, the enabling, the gaslighting, all documented years before this crisis. Noted. Judge Reeves agreed. Mr. Ashford, is there more? The private investigator's reports include financial forensics. Madison Matthews has been depositing cash in structured amounts to avoid reporting requirements. The deposits match timing with reported medication thefts. She's made approximately $200,000 over 3 years selling stolen medications. That's not possible. Madison's voice finally came through the speaker, high and desperate. I want to see this so-called evidence. You'll see it at your criminal trial, Detective Ross said from her seat. We've already frozen your accounts and seized your assets under civil forfeiture laws. This is entrapment, Madison shouted. Grandma set me up. She created this situation to frame me. No one forced you to steal medication, Judge Reeves replied. No one made you forge prescriptions or break into your sister's apartment. Your grandmother simply documented your existing criminal behavior. Jody's lying. She's always been jealous. Ms. Matthews. The judge's voice cut like a blade. I personally witnessed your sister have a grand mal seizure that lasted 4 minutes and 40 seconds. I watched her convulse on my courtroom floor while you laughed. Do not insult this court by claiming she was performing. Madison went silent again. Your Honor. Mr. Ashford continued, there's one more component. Mrs. Dorothy Matthews recorded a video message for Jody to be played after the letter was read. A laptop was produced, and Grandma's face filled the screen. She looked older than I remembered, frailer, but her eyes were sharp as ever. My darling Jody, her recorded voice said, and I started crying. If you're watching this, then I'm gone, and the family has shown their true colors. I want you to know that every word in my letter is true, but also that my love for you is real. You were the only grandchild who saw me as a person, not a wallet. When I was moved to the nursing home, forgotten by most, you came every week. You brought me tea and gossip and photos of your design work. You never once asked for money or favors. I watched Madison target you with growing alarm, saw her interest in your medication, her calculated questions. I knew what was coming, but hoped I was wrong. I'm sorry I couldn't protect you directly. But I could protect your future. The estate is yours, my dear. Use it to build a life free from those who would harm you. The house in Savannah has a beautiful studio with north-facing windows perfect for your design work. There's a garden where you can grow the purple flowers you love. Don't feel guilty about the family's reaction. They made their choices. David and Linda chose to enable a predator. The others chose comfortable lies over uncomfortable truths. You chose to survive despite them. Be happy, my dear one. Take your medication, follow your dreams, and know that one person in this family saw your worth. All my love, Grandma. The video ended. I was sobbing, but they were complicated tears. Grief, validation, love, and loss all mingled together. The letter and video speak for themselves, Mr. Ashford said. Dorothy Matthews' intent is clear. Her evidence is comprehensive. Her wishes are unambiguous. Does anyone wish to contest the will? Judge Reeves asked, though her tone suggested they shouldn't. Dad looked at Mom, who looked at the screen where Madison sat in jail orange. None of them spoke. Then I'm prepared to rule, the judge said. Based on the evidence presented, including documented theft, fraud, and medical endangerment, I find that Madison Matthews has demonstrated character deserving of disinheritance. I find that David and Linda Matthews enabled criminal behavior that endangered their daughter's life. I find that Jody Matthews is the sole beneficiary who meets Dorothy Matthews' character requirements. She paused, looking directly at my parents. I further find that Dorothy Matthews' investigation materials warrant criminal referral. Detective Ross, please coordinate with the district attorney regarding charges against David and Linda Matthews for accessory to prescription fraud. What? Mom gasped. You paid to cover up crimes. You enabled continued victimization. You physically prevented Jody from recovering stolen medication. Judge Reeves' voice was implacable. Actions have consequences. Your Honor. Maria Gonzalez stood from the victims section. What about the victims' fund mentioned in the letter? Mr. Ashford will establish the fund immediately. Each documented victim will receive compensation for medical costs, lost wages, and suffering. The judge looked at each victim. Mrs. Matthews couldn't undo what her granddaughter did, but she tried to make amends. As the hearing concluded, my family filed out in silence. No apologies, no acknowledgement, just defeat and resentment. Madison's screen went dark without a word. But the victims stayed surrounding me with the warmth my blood family had never provided. Your grandmother was amazing, Ruth said, to plan all this to make sure you were protected. She saved us all, James added. Without her investigation, Madison would still be hunting. I clutched the USB drive Mr. Ashford had given me, a copy of Grandma's video and all her notes about me, the granddaughter she'd loved enough to protect from beyond the grave. The estate was mine, but more importantly, the truth was finally and fully revealed. Grandma had orchestrated the ultimate revelation of character, and in the end, love had triumphed over greed, truth over lies, and justice over enabling. I thought about the purple flowers I'd plant in her Savannah garden. Each bloom would be a reminder that someone in my family had chosen me, had seen my worth, had loved me enough to plan this elaborate protection. Grandma was gone, but her love and justice would bloom forever in that garden. The hospital lobby erupted into chaos the moment we exited the conference room. Madison had somehow coordinated her lawyer to file an emergency motion, and process servers were waiting. But so were Detective Ross and 4 uniformed officers. Madison Matthews is already in custody, Detective Ross announced as Madison's lawyer approached me with papers, and I have warrants for David and Linda Matthews. My parents, who'd been heading for the exit, froze. Dad's face went ashen while Mom clutched her designer purse like a shield. This is ridiculous, Dad blustered. We're leaving. No, sir, you're not. Detective Ross nodded to the officers. David Matthews, Linda Matthews, you're under arrest for accessory to prescription fraud, obstruction of justice, and conspiracy to commit medical endangerment. The arrest unfolded with surreal efficiency. Rights were read while hospital visitors pretended not to stare. Mom's careful composure finally cracked completely. We were protecting our daughter, she screamed as handcuffs clicked around her wrists. What kind of mother doesn't protect her child? The kind who sacrifices one daughter for the other, Detective Ross replied evenly. As they were led away, Dad looked back at me once. For the first time in my life, I saw him actually see me, not as the problematic daughter with the inconvenient medical condition, but as the person they'd thrown away. The recognition lasted only a second before anger replaced it, but I'd seen it. "Jody, we need to go to the station," Detective Ross said once they were gone. Madison's apartment search revealed significant evidence. At the police station, Detective Ross led me to a conference room where boxes of evidence lined the walls. Each one was labeled with dates and victim names, a cardboard monument to Madison's crimes. "Your sister was meticulous," she said, pulling out a leather journal. "She kept records of everything: victims' medications, stolen street prices, profit margins. She ran this like a business." I opened the journal with trembling hands. Madison's familiar handwriting filled pages with cold calculations. Maria G., epilepsy. Kepra, 30-day supply, $400 street value. James C., epilepsy. Lamictal, Psui Vimpat, $600 easy sale to pre-meds. Ruth B., diabetes, insulin pens, $800 to uninsured diabetics. My own name appeared on page 47. Jody, epilepsy, trileptal, Puels, Klonopin, family access makes this easy. Mom and Dad will help. Estimate $1,000 monthly profit ongoing. She planned to make $1,000 a month off my medication. My voice sounded strange to my own ears. "Look at the next entry," Detective Ross said gently. "Once inheritance comes through, can claim power of attorney due to her instability, control medication and money. Set for life." The words blurred as rage and grief battled in my chest. This wasn't opportunistic theft. Madison had planned to control my entire life using my epilepsy as the weapon. "There's more," Detective Ross warned. "The computers we seized show she was researching ways to trigger seizures. Google searches for how to cause epileptic seizure, stress-induced seizure triggers, can missing doses cause death?" I had to sit down. She was trying to kill me or incapacitate you enough to gain control. She'd bookmarked articles about epileptics who died from seizures, focusing on the inheritance implications. "How long?" I whispered. "The earliest searches date back 2 years, around the time your grandmother updated her will." 2 years. Madison had been planning this for 2 years, studying my condition, like a predator, learning its prey's weaknesses. Jennifer Walsh arrived as I was processing this horror. "The criminal case just got stronger. Madison's lawyer is already negotiating a plea deal." "No," I said firmly. "No deals. I want a trial. I want everyone to know what she did." "That's your right," Jennifer agreed. "But you should know your parents' lawyers are trying to claim coercion. They say Madison manipulated them." "Show them this." Detective Ross handed over another evidence box. "Bank records showing your parents knew exactly what they were funding." The records were damning. Regular transfers to Madison labeled medical expenses that coincided with her victim payoffs, checks to lawyers after each arrest, even payments to a private investigator not to investigate Madison, but to investigate me for signs of prescription abuse. They hired someone to prove I was an addict. The betrayal deepened with each revelation. "The PI found nothing because there was nothing to find," Detective Ross said. "But they kept paying him to watch you document your pharmacy visits, track your doctors. They were building a case to have you declared incompetent." That's when the final piece clicked. The intervention, they were going to use that as evidence. 15 family witnesses ready to testify about your addiction, Madison controlling the narrative and parents pushing for guardianship. Jennifer's expression was grim. "If you hadn't stood your ground, you'd be in a facility right now with Madison controlling your medication and inheritance." Maria Gonzalez knocked and entered. "Sorry to interrupt, but the victims group wanted you to see this." She handed me a printed news article. "Local woman exposed as leader of prescription theft ring." The headline read, The article detailed Madison's arrest, the victim count, and the inheritance dispute that had exposed it all. But what caught my attention was the sidebar, Epilepsy Awareness: How Medication Theft Endangers Lives, featuring quotes from Dr. Brennan about the critical nature of consistent medication. "It's gone viral," Maria explained. "Other victims are coming forward. Madison targeted people in 3 states through online support groups." My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number, then another, then dozens. "Thank you for exposing her. She stole my son's ADHD medication." My mother died after Madison took her insulin. We could never prove it until now. I had to drop out of law school after she triggered my seizures. Seeing justice gives me hope. Each message was another life Madison had derailed, another family she'd destroyed. The victim count was approaching 30. "We need to expand the investigation," Detective Ross said, reading over my shoulder. "This is interstate trafficking. The FBI will want involvement." As if summoned, 2 federal agents arrived. They introduced themselves as Special Agents Chen and Morrison specialists in pharmaceutical crimes. "Ms. Matthews, your sister's operation is one of the most sophisticated we've seen, targeting disabled individuals," Agent Chen explained. "She didn't just steal medications. She studied her victims, learned their conditions, calculated exactly how much she could take without immediate death. It's sociopathic." "What about my parents?" I asked. "They're looking at 5 to 10 years for conspiracy and money laundering," Agent Morrison said. "More if we can prove they knew about the murder planning." Murder planning. The words hung in the air like poison. That evening from my hotel room, I watched the news coverage explode. Madison's mugshot was everywhere alongside photos of her victims. My seizure in the courthouse had been captured on security footage, and while the video itself wasn't released, the still image of Judge Reeves kneeling beside my convulsing form became the defining visual of the case. The hotel phone rang. It was Mr. Ashford. "Jody, I've been fielding calls all day. Publishers want your story. Documentary makers are interested. Advocacy groups want you as a spokesperson." He paused. "What would you like me to tell them?" I thought about it. The easy answer was to hide, to take Grandma's money and disappear. But then I remembered Maria losing her teaching career, James missing medical school, Ruth's slow recovery from diabetic complications, all the victims in those messages who'd suffered in silence. "Tell them I'll think about it," I said finally. "But first, I want to make sure the Victims Fund is established. Every penny of restitution should go to the people Madison hurt." "Your grandmother would be proud," he said softly. "She always said you had the strongest character in the family." That night, unable to sleep, I read through more of Madison's journal. Between the cold calculations were glimpses of her twisted logic. "Jody doesn't appreciate what she has. If she really needed these pills, she'd guard them better. Chronic illness is just weakness. I'm doing them a favor, proving they're stronger than they think. Why should defective people get all the sympathy? I'm the one struggling to build a business." Defective. That's how she saw us. Not as people with medical conditions, but as defective products to be exploited. My phone rang at 2 a.m, Beth calling from her night shift. "Jody, I'm sorry to call so late, but Madison's in the hospital. Apparent suicide attempt in jail." My first feeling was numbness, then anger. Even now, she was trying to control the narrative to become the victim. "Is she okay?" I asked because I had to. "She'll survive. Superficial cuts likely for attention rather than actual harm." Beth paused. "Your parents are demanding to see her, but they're still in custody themselves." The cycle of enabling threatened to begin again, even from jail cells. But this time, the system was watching. "Thanks for letting me know," I told Beth. "But I'm done worrying about Madison. She's made her choices." As dawn broke, I stood at my hotel window watching the city wake up. Somewhere out there, 30-plus victims were living with the consequences of Madison's greed. Some had rebuilt their lives. Others were still struggling. All deserved better than what my family had given them. Detective Ross called with one final revelation. We found Grandma Dorothy's complete files at Madison's apartment. She'd stolen them from the estate lawyer's office trying to find leverage. But Jody, your grandmother documented every kind thing you ever did. Every visit, every conversation, every gesture of genuine love. She has photos of you bringing her tea recordings, of you reading to her notes about your design work. She loved you more than you know. I cried then, not from pain, but from the overwhelming knowledge that someone had seen me, really seen me, and found me worthy of protection and love. The arrests were complete. The revelations had all come to light. Madison faced decades in prison, my parents faced their own sentences, and 30 victims finally had validation. But most importantly, Grandma's truth had prevailed. She'd known that justice delayed wasn't justice denied, it was justice prepared, documented and delivered with receipts. The purple flowers in her Savannah garden would bloom after all. 3 months after the courtroom seizure that changed everything, I stood in the garden of Grandma Dorothy's Victorian house in Savannah. The morning sun filtered through Spanish moss hanging from ancient oak trees, and the purple flowers I'd planted were beginning to bloom. Each delicate petal felt like a promise, kept a life reclaimed. The house had become my sanctuary and unexpectedly a haven for others. What started as my retreat had evolved into something more meaningful, a healing space for those affected by medication theft and medical abuse. The morning glory is taking over the fence. Maria called from where she knelt among the herbs. She'd been staying in the guest house for 2 weeks, using the time to rebuild her teaching portfolio and prepare for job interviews. The seizure that had cost her career was now part of her story, not her shame. Let it climb, I replied, thinking of how we'd all learned to grow despite attempts to uproot us. Inside the formal dining room had been transformed into a meeting space. Every Thursday, victims of prescription theft gathered to share experiences and resources. Beth had helped establish protocols, Dr. Brennan provided medical oversight, and Jennifer Walsh offered legal guidance pro bono. We'd created what Madison had pretended to offer genuine community support. The doorbell chimed and I found James on the porch holding acceptance letters. 3 medical schools, he announced, tears streaming down his face. They all accepted me after reading my personal statement about overcoming medication theft. We celebrated with tea and Grandma's lavender cookies, the recipe found in her handwritten collection. The young man whose dreams Madison had nearly destroyed was proof that stolen futures could be reclaimed. Madison herself was serving 18 years in federal prison. The trial had been swift, her meticulous records serving as evidence against her. She'd maintained her victim act until the end, claiming addiction and mental illness she didn't have, but the jury saw through it. When the verdict was read, she'd finally shown genuine emotion, rage at being held accountable. My parents had accepted plea deals, 5 years each for conspiracy and obstruction, with the possibility of early release for good behavior. They'd never apologized, never acknowledged the harm they'd caused. Their lawyers sent periodic requests for financial assistance from Grandma's estate, each one denied with satisfaction. The doorbell rang again, Detective Ross, with monthly updates. She'd become an unexpected friend through this ordeal. The victim count is at 47. She reported settling into Grandma's favorite armchair. FBI found Madison's contacts in 2 more states. But here's the good news: the case has led to new legislation. The Madison-Matthews Act will increase penalties for targeting disabled individuals for prescription theft. My sister's name attached to protective legislation felt like cosmic justice. She'd wanted fame and fortune. Instead, she'd become a cautionary tale. And the restitution fund, fully funded and growing. Every victim has received compensation for medical costs and lost wages. The overflow is funding prescription assistance programs. That evening, our support group met as usual. The dining room filled with familiar faces, and some new ones word had spread about our sanctuary. Each person carried their own story of betrayal and recovery, of medication stolen and lives reclaimed. I want to share something. I said when my turn came. This week marks 6 months since my last seizure. My medication levels are stable, my stress is managed, and for the first time since diagnosis, I feel truly safe. The room erupted in applause. Ruth wiped tears, remembering her own milestone of regulated blood sugar after Madison's insulin theft nearly killed her. We were all recovering each at our own pace. I also want to announce that the documentary about our experiences has been picked up by a major network. I continued. All proceeds will go to the Victims Fund. We decided collectively to share our stories not for sympathy, but for awareness. Too many people dismissed medication theft as minor crime, not understanding it could kill. Our voices would change that. After the meeting, I walked through Grandma's house, my house now touching familiar objects with new appreciation. Her piano where she'd played hymns on Sunday mornings, her library filled with mysteries and medical journals, her desk where she'd planned the elaborate revelation of truth that saved my life. In her study, I kept the investigation files, not from morbidity, but as a reminder of her dedication to justice. She'd spent her final years documenting crimes others ignored, building a case others wouldn't see, protecting a granddaughter others dismissed. The Savannah studio she'd mentioned in her video had become my design workspace. North-facing windows flooded it with perfect light, and clients appreciated the story behind the woman who created their websites. Surviving attempted murder by medication theft had given my work depth I'd never imagined. My phone buzzed with a text from someone I'd been cautiously rebuilding a relationship with, my cousin Beth, the nurse, who'd seen through the intervention facade. She'd become family in ways my parents never were, checking on my medication schedule and celebrating my seizure-free months. 6 months of healing deserves celebration, her text read. Dinner tomorrow, my treat. As night fell over Savannah, I sat on the porch swing where Grandma had spent her evenings. The purple flowers glowed in the moonlight, their fragrance carrying on the southern breeze. Somewhere, Madison sat in a cell, consequences finally finding her. My parents faced their own reckoning, and scattered across the country, 47 survivors were rebuilding lives she'd tried to steal. But here in Grandma's garden, surrounded by purple blooms and the ghosts of love that protected me even from the grave, I was more than a survivor. I was proof that truth prevails, that justice can bloom in the darkest soil, and that the vulnerable can become victorious. The seizure in the courtroom had been my lowest moment, convulsing while my sister laughed my body, betraying me in the most public way. But it had also been the catalyst for everything that followed. Judge Reeves often called to check on the Victims Fund, telling me that witnessing my seizure had changed how she viewed medical endangerment cases. My vulnerability in that moment had created lasting systemic change. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. Some victims still struggled with medical costs. Others faced ongoing health consequences from missed medications. The trauma of betrayal didn't vanish with justice served, but we faced it together, a chosen family forged in shared experience. As I prepared my evening medications, the routine that kept me stable and seizure-free, I thought about everyone who'd tried to steal this from me. Madison with her greed, my parents with their enabling, the family who'd gathered to gaslight me into submission. They'd all failed because one elderly woman had seen the truth and prepared for war. Thank you, Grandma, I whispered to the garden she'd promised I'd tend, for seeing me, protecting me, and teaching me that love is the ultimate justice. Inside, I turned on my computer to work on a new client's website, a nonprofit supporting disabled individuals. My story had opened doors to meaningful work I'd never imagined. Every project felt like extending Grandma's protection to others who needed it. The house settled around me with familiar creaks and sighs. In the morning, Maria would tend the garden while preparing for her interview. James would stop by with coffee and study for his MCAT retake. Ruth would call with updates on the diabetes support group she'd started. We'd built something beautiful from the ashes of what Madison had burned. My medication alarm chimed evening doses taken religiously, never again vulnerable to theft. As I swallowed the pills that kept my brain stable, I smiled. Madison had seen my epilepsy as weakness to exploit, but it had become my strength, my truth, my connection to a community of survivors who refused to be victims. The purple flowers would bloom every spring, reminders that Grandma's love was stronger than family betrayal. The Victims Fund would grow, helping those Madison had hurt, and I would continue to thrive not in spite of my epilepsy, but with it protected by truth and surrounded by chosen family who saw my worth. Justice had been served, healing had begun, and in Grandma Dorothy's garden love bloomed eternal, purple and perfect in the southern sun. To those reading this story, have you ever faced betrayal from those who were supposed to protect you? How did you find your chosen family? Please share your thoughts in the comments below, and if this story resonated with you, consider subscribing and sharing it with others who might need to hear that justice and healing are possible. Thank you for joining me on this journey, and remember, your vulnerability is not weakness. It's the birthplace of your strength.